in Numbers 33, towards the end of the book, towards the end of their journey. They're getting close to the promised land. They're getting some final instructions, final preparations, so they can cross over and start inheriting this land that God had promised to the people. And he tells them this, that as they enter the land, to be sure and drive out all the inhabitants of the land, because if they don't, those people will become barbs in their eyes and thorns in their sides, and give them trouble where they live. And then God will have to do to the Israelites, what he would have done to those people. He's telling them to get rid of these things that could cause them problems, that could drag them away, that could come between them and God, that could cause them to turn away from God. In Numbers 25, we've already seen it happen. Some Moabite women start coming around the camp and coming around the men, and they lose their way. They start doing things that God has told them not to do. And it causes problems for the nation of Israel. It causes problems for the people. Paul puts it well in 1 Corinthians. He says, bad company corrupts good character. That no matter if we have the best intentions, we have the best ideas, that we mean to do well, we mean to do one thing. But if we're around certain things, and if we allow certain influences in our lives, then at some point they're gonna chip away at that. They're gonna drag us away. They're gonna pull us off track. Hebrews has this great progression of how we as people, we just start getting a little bit off here and a little bit off there, and slowly but surely, next thing we know, we're way off the path that we meant to be on. We're nowhere near where God wanted us to be, and that's how it works. That's why God is telling his people to clear this out, because he doesn't want these things to influence them. He doesn't want them to drag them down, to pull them away. He doesn't want them to come between God and his people. In the New Testament, we're told to flee from sin. And yet that's not usually how most of us treat sin. We're a whole lot more about flirting with sin than fleeing from it. We want to know where the line is. We want to know how far we are allowed to go. How far can we go without really crossing the line, breaking the rules? Jesus addresses that in the Sermon on the Mount. Because here's this whole group of people, they've grown up with the law, the things we're talking about right here, the commandments and the laws, and they're trying to stick to those things. And the Pharisees have drawn very, very precise lines with a whole lot of things. I mean, they're measuring out how many steps you can take on the Sabbath and things like that. They've been very, very specific with, here's the line, we don't cross this. But they get as close to it as they can most of the time. And that's why they have those lines so specifically. Well, I'm allowed to go this far. And what Jesus comes in and tells them is, if that's your focus, you've missed the point. That's not the point. The point is not to see how close you can get to sin without doing it. The point is to go in the opposite direction of that sin. Getting closer and closer to sin is never going to get us closer to Jesus. He's the other way. That's why we're supposed to focus on getting closer to him, and that's going to pull us away from those things. And that's what he's telling the people here, as they enter this land, to get rid of those things, to push those things away so that they can be with God. So that they can be his people, so that he can be their God, so he can dwell among them and live among his people. That's what he's always wanted. That's what he wanted with Adam and Eve, and they chose not to do that. And that's what he's promised to Abraham, and that's what he wants to do with the people of Israel here in their land. And you know what? They're not going to drive out all the inhabitants. Just spoiler. They don't. They don't finish the job. They start to, like lots of things. They do really good for a while, and they just don't quite finish it off, and they don't totally do what God asked them to do. And it does cause problems. It does give them issues. And those things drag them away. Those things pull them away. Solomon, this great king for Israel, the wisest man, right? Solomon's wisdom, it's famous. And yet he allowed influence. He had all these wives and all these different things, and eventually some of those things start to break him down, start to drag him away. They get in between him and God. They cause problems. That'll cause problems in our lives too. When we allow influence and we allow things into our lives that, as we talked about last week, make us unclean, that become between us and God, things that, if I have this, I can't come into God. I can't come see him. I can't come spend time with him. I can't come drag some of these things in with me. They're just not allowed in there. And so God's saying, if you want to hold on to that, that means you can't come in here with me. And that breaks his heart. He wants us to be able to come to him and spend time with him and be around him and be his people. He wanted that for the Israelites. He wants that for us. And it means letting go of those things that drag us down, that pull us away, that entice us. The reason those Moabite women come down, it's actually Balaam's idea. We get all the prophecies from Balaam, and he's blessing the people because he can only say what God tells him to say. But at some point, the indication is that after that, because Balak's probably pretty mad at him, and he's probably trying to find a way not to get killed by Balak. But he gives Balak this idea, hey, we can't curse them directly. We can't attack them head on like that. Why don't you just send some women down? Why don't you just send some distractions down? They'll mess themselves up. They'll trip themselves up. We don't have to be the ones that knock them down. They will knock themselves down if we just give them the opportunity. And Satan does that so much. He just puts things out there that we get tripped up in, that we get dragged down by. That's why Hebrews 12 tells us to throw off the sin that so easily entangles us. We get easily entangled. We need to throw those things off. We need to drive out those inhabitants of the land so that we can live there totally and completely in relationship with God. Not dragged down, not pulled away by anything else, but totally focused on Him. Love you guys. See you soon.